Zelenskyy suggested that the war be ended in Crimea. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced that his main goal was to attack Russia's annexed Crimea. "We cannot imagine Ukraine without Crimea," Zelenskyy said, adding that Putin has also lost control of his country. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy interviewed CNN. Zelenskyy said they are trying to reclaim lands in the south and east of Ukraine with the new goal of freeing Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014. Vladimir Zelenskyy, "We cannot imagine Ukraine without Crimea. Even if Crimea is under Russian occupation, it can only mean one thing: the war is not over." Asked if there would be peace without Crimea, the Ukrainian president replied, "Then there will be no victory. Putin is out of control." Zelenskyy said Russian President Vladimir Putin's response to Wagner's military attack was weak, and that his own people lost control. Annexation of Crimea in 2014. Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 after a conflict with Ukraine. This move of Wagner, who was responsible for the annexation of Crimea to Russia, is famous. Almost a year has passed since the Russian army entered Ukraine, but there are no real signs that the conflict is over. Neither side seems ready for a military victory, and progress at the summit looks unlikely. Neither side has released new figures, but analysts estimate some Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded in battle so far. By contrast, Ukraine claimed that about 100,000 people were injured in the operation and 30,000 civilians were killed. Meanwhile, neither Russian leader Vladimir Putin nor Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy faced World War II, one of the biggest military conflicts since the war ended. For civilians caught in the crossfire, it means the blood and the pain of war are not over. Article: The conflict between Russia and Ukraine will support long-term conflict. Staying in Kyiv and overthrowing the Zelenskyy government is uncomfortable. The Ukrainian opposition is stronger than expected, partly thanks to years of training and weapons in the West, not the Moscow army work. The 40-kilometer meeting of the Russians reached the main highway leading to the city, which became a symbol of the military defeat of the Kremlin. Russia then turned its offensive south, occupied the city of Mariupol with its troops after a major disaster. For the security of the Crimean Peninsula's Black Sea coastline to the Donbass region, Moscow occupied and annexed the region in 2017. 2014. In late summer and autumn, however, Ukrainian forces launched an offensive that repulsed the Russian army from the south, and the lands to the east came and liberated the important city of Kherson. Neither side has accomplished much since then. Russia continues to use force, targeting Ukrainian cities and infrastructure with missiles and drones. He also worked for months to capture the eastern city of Bakhmut, but this was barely placed on the offensive map. Last week, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that the anticipated Russian spring has already begun. Ukraine is also expected to take strict measures in the coming weeks. Negotiations will not be possible. Most analysts agree that a diplomatic agreement to end the conflict seems unlikely. Already annoyed by his army's poor performance in what he referred to as special forces, Putin could not be seen retreating from the fight he started, which by his own account should have easily won. For Zelenskyy, the risk is at least high. A poll among Ukrainians in September showed that they refuse to give land to Russia. It means unity, said Mikhail Alexeyev, a professor of political science at San Diego State University, whose current research focuses on the Ukrainian war military base. He said he saw it as a threat. It's very difficult for Ukrainians to do a job that undermines the integrity of the country, said Serhiy Ploki, professor of Ukrainian history at Harvard University. At London House Study Business and Social Sciences, historian Vladislav Zubok said Putin would not have the political will to sign the deal if it meant signing a negotiated deal. All the political work to annex Crimea, and Zubok will not let go easily. Loss of the Russian army and property item. Kyiv will have to save a large field of struggle for success. This is a beautiful lightning that brings back the city of Kharkov and Kherson. However, Chalap said neither side will easily win. I don't think Ukraine can eliminate all Russian forces that could pose a threat to its country, he said. Zelenskyy has publicly announced the withdrawal of the Ukrainian army from Crimea, in a move that Ukrainian leaders believe will spark a revolt against Putin and ultimately secure Ukraine's borders. Most analysts agree on this. Zubok said they believed not that Putin will collapse, but that there will be a second collapse of sorts, similar to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. I would say it's a great game. It's a very dangerous game. Putin hints at the possibility of using tactical nuclear weapons as the Russian military continues to lose confidence, a move President Biden says would be a big mistake. However, given the potential for a full military response from the West, Harvard's Ploki believes Putin will not do so. Putin is not suicidal. Write many books. Russia is weak with the future, the battle of Ukraine. But the idea that Russia will only use the resources it needs to fight, Alexeyev says, is mostly fantasy. The defense agencies in Russia work in 3 or 4 shifts. Despite Western sanctions blocking the supply of microchips needed for Russia's advanced electronic equipment, the Kremlin's forces remain strong. Russia still has a large stockpile of low-grade weapons that are deadly even without advanced equipment, said. Alexeyev said it's important to remember the saying, Russia just doesn't stand still. They are adjusting their strategy and learning from their failures, he said, adding that about 300,000 soldiers have been redeployed. At the same time, the supply of the best weapons from the United States and other NATO allies, enabling Ukraine to join the war, seems to be dwindling. There are signs that Western arsenals are being strained by the needs of the Ukrainian battlefield. Jack Watling, the agency's senior partner in ground warfare, said Zelenskyy's army had removed its stockpile of anti-tank weapons such as projectiles, javelins, and NLAW, as well as the surface-to-surface missiles needed to attack Russian aircraft and missiles. Royal United Services Institute, a London think tank. They're depleting ammo faster than we can produce it. Speaking at a German security conference in Munich on Friday, Zelenskyy said Western military aid could die, Watling recently told NPR. But so far, morale in the Ukrainian army has been high, Plosi said. The defense of the country is a strong motivator. Still, there are signs of discontent in Russia. A November poll by the Russian independent polling organization Levada Center shows little support for Russia's military presence in Ukraine, but meanwhile, the majority of respondents, 53%, said there are now a serious threat to Crimea may upset the Russians that this could be a conflict. Instead, the result will most likely please no one. Alexeyev of the SDSU named it Mariupol 2.0 because of the slowness and destruction of the city in the first months of the war. It will take years, not months, for Russia to crush Ukraine, he said. Chalap agreed that conflict could be time-dependent. There's a situation where the meaning of war is not going to end anytime soon, he said. Conflict over the years. The West's ability and willingness to control Ukraine economically and militarily is balanced by Russia's will and ability to do more, said. It's hard to predict how long that will take.